The rain hammered against Jake Morrison's windshield as his pickup truck rumbled down the empty highway outside Millbrook, Tennessee. It was past midnight, and he'd just finished a double shift at the construction site. His daughter Lily was spending the night at his sister's house, giving him a rare evening alone, though alone just meant more time to worry about bills, custody arrangements, and whether he was failing as a father. That's when he saw her. A figure stumbled along the shoulder of the road, soaked to the bone, wearing what looked like a hospital gown. Jake's foot hit the brake instinctively. In his rearview mirror, he watched the girl collapse onto the wet asphalt. "Jesus," he muttered, throwing the truck into reverse. He grabbed his jacket and rain gear from the back seat and ran to her. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair plastered to her face, and eyes that held a kind of terror Jake had only seen once before, in the eyes of his late wife Sarah, during her final days battling cancer. Hey, you're okay," Jake said, kneeling beside her. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name's Jake. Can you tell me your name?" The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. She flinched when he reached toward her, and Jake saw the bruises on her wrists, the scratches on her arms, the way her hands trembled uncontrollably. "Okay, no problem. Let's just get you out of this rain, all right?" He draped his jacket over her shoulders and helped her to the truck. She didn't resist, but she didn't help either. She moved like someone in a trance. Once inside, Jake cranked up the heat and assessed the situation. The nearest hospital was 40 minutes away. The girl was shivering violently, her lips tinged blue. "I'm taking you to get help," Jake said gently. "You're safe now." At the hospital, things got complicated fast. The girl had no identification, no memory of who she was or where she came from. When the doctors examined her, they found evidence of long-term malnutrition, old fractures that had healed poorly, and signs of psychological trauma. The police were called. Social services got involved. Jake sat in the waiting room telling himself he'd done his good deed and could leave. But something kept him there. Maybe the way the girl had gripped his hand in the truck, the first sign of trust she'd shown. Maybe it was because he knew what it felt like to be lost and afraid. A detective named Martinez approached him. "Mr. Morrison, we're going to need your statement." Over the next hour, Jake explained everything. When he asked what would happen to the girl, Martinez sighed. "She'll go into the system, foster care most likely, until we can figure out who she is. We've run her prints, but nothing came up. Could be she was never in any database." "What if she doesn't remember?" Jake asked. "Then we've got a Jane Doe on our hands," Martinez said. "It's a tough situation." Jake thought about his daughter Lily, 8 years old in the center of his universe. He thought about what Sarah would have done. Then he heard himself saying something crazy. "What if I took her in?" "Temporarily, I mean, until you figure things out." Martinez raised an eyebrow. "You've got a single-parent household, Mr. Morrison. That's not typically... I've got a spare room. My sister lives nearby and helps with my daughter. I'm not rich, but I'm stable. And that girl..." Jake gestured toward the examination room. "She's terrified. Shuffling her through the system seems cruel. It took 2 weeks of background checks, home visits, and evaluations, but somehow, Jake became the temporary guardian of a girl with no past. She still couldn't, or wouldn't, speak. Doctors suspected selective mutism caused by trauma. Jake named her Hope, because, as he told Lily, everyone needs hope. Hope moved into the small bedroom that had once been Sarah's art studio. She was skittish, jumping at loud noises, refusing to be alone in a room. But slowly, day by day, she began to emerge from her shell. Lily, with a child's uncomplicated kindness, became Hope's constant companion, showing her drawings, teaching her to play video games, chattering endlessly even when Hope didn't respond. Jake watched Hope carefully. She was smart, that much was clear. When he left books lying around, she devoured them. She picked up on household routines instantly, and sometimes when she thought no one was watching, she'd hum melodies that sounded like classical music, complex pieces that suggested years of training. 3 months in, something happened. Jake's sister Amy came over for dinner, and the conversation turned to Amy's recent vacation to Martha's Vineyard. She showed photos on her phone, beaches, boats, historic mansions. Hope, sitting quietly at the table, suddenly gasped. Her hand shot out, pointing at a photo of a particular estate with white columns and sprawling gardens. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Do you recognize this place?" Hope's mouth opened, and for the first time since he'd found her, she spoke. Her voice was raspy, unused, but the words were clear. "Home. That was home." The room fell silent. Amy pulled up the photo description. "This is the old Thornton estate. It's been abandoned for years. Some tragedy happened there, I can't remember what." Jake's heart raced. "Thornton? That name mean anything to you, Hope?" Hope's eyes filled with tears. "Thornton," she whispered. "Elizabeth Thornton. I think that's my name. The investigation that followed was like something from a movie." Jake contacted Detective Martinez, who ran the name Elizabeth Thornton. What came back made national headlines within days. Elizabeth Thornton was the daughter of billionaire tech mogul Richard Thornton and his wife Catherine. In 2002, when Elizabeth was 5 years old, she'd been kidnapped from their Martha's Vineyard estate. The case had dominated media coverage for months. Despite a massive FBI investigation and a $50 million reward, Elizabeth was never found. The kidnappers never made contact, never demanded ransom. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. The Thorntons had never stopped searching. Richard had devoted his fortune to missing children's organizations. Catherine had died by suicide 10 years after Elizabeth's disappearance, unable to live with the loss. Richard, now in his 70s, had become a recluse. DNA testing confirmed what seemed impossible. Hope was Elizabeth Thornton, missing for 23 years. The media descended on Millbrook like locusts. Jake's small house was besieged by reporters, his phone ringing constantly through it all. Elizabeth clung to Jake and Lily like lifelines. "I don't remember him," she told Jake one night, crying. "My father. I don't remember any of it, just pieces. A woman's voice, a locked room, pain. And then nothing until you found me." "That's okay," Jake said softly. "You don't owe anyone your memories. They'll come when they're ready, or they won't. Either way, you're still you." The reunion with Richard Thornton happened 2 weeks later, at a neutral location arranged by therapists and FBI agents. Elizabeth was terrified. Jake offered to stay with her, and she accepted gratefully. Richard Thornton looked nothing like the powerful mogul from photos. He was thin, aged beyond his years, his hands shaking as he entered the room. When he saw Elizabeth, he collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "Lizzie," he whispered. "My Lizzie." Elizabeth stood frozen. Jake gently squeezed her hand. "Mr. Thornton," she said finally, I wish I could remember you. I'm sorry. Don't apologize," Richard said fiercely. "Never apologize. You survived. That's all that matters." He looked at Jake. "And you, Mr. Morrison, you saved my daughter's life. How can I ever repay you?" "You can't," Jake said simply, "and I don't want you to try. I did what any decent person would do." Over the following months, the full story emerged through Elizabeth's fragmented memories. An FBI investigation. She'd been taken by a woman named Margaret Cole, a former Thornton employee who'd been fired and held a deranged grudge. Cole had kept Elizabeth locked in various locations over the years, homeschooling her under a false identity, convincing her that her real parents were dead, that the outside world was dangerous. The psychological manipulation had been profound. Cole had died 6 months before Jake found Elizabeth. Without her captor's control, Elizabeth had finally escaped, though with little memory of who she was or where she belonged. The question everyone asked was, what now? Richard wanted his daughter back, naturally. He offered Elizabeth everything, mansions, private jets, unlimited resources. But Elizabeth, still fragile, still healing, made an unexpected choice. "I want to stay with Jake and Lily," she told the therapist, the lawyers, everyone. "They're my family. They saved me. I'm not ready to leave them." Richard could have fought it. He had the money, the lawyers, the legal right. But he surprised everyone, including himself, by agreeing. "I lost you once by not being there when you needed me," he told Elizabeth. "I won't lose you again by forcing you into something you're not ready for. Take your time. I'll be here when you are." The compromise they reached was imperfect but workable. Elizabeth stayed with Jake and Lily in Millbrook, continuing therapy, slowly rebuilding herself. Richard visited regularly, patient and gentle, letting his daughter come to him at her own pace. He also did something else. He set up a foundation in Jake's name, funding programs that helped vulnerable young people in foster care, trafficking survivors, and missing persons cases. A year later, Elizabeth stood in Jake's backyard, watching Lily chase fireflies in the summer twilight. She'd gained weight, the haunted look had faded from her eyes, and she'd started college part-time studying psychology. She wanted to help others like herself. "I had a memory today," she told Jake, who was manning the grill. "A real one, from before. I was 4, maybe 5. My mom, Catherine, she was teaching me piano. I could hear the music, feel her hands guiding mine." "That's good," Jake said. "Those memories are part of you." "So is this," Elizabeth said, gesturing to the house, the yard, Lily laughing in the grass. "This family. You gave me a life when I had none. You didn't want money or recognition. You just cared. You're easy to care about," Jake said simply. Richard arrived then for dinner, as he did most Fridays now. Elizabeth hugged him, a gesture that had taken months to feel natural. He'd never replaced Jake in her heart, but he'd found his own place there, as a father learning to know his daughter all over again that night after dinner. Elizabeth sat between Jake and Richard, with Lily curled against her side. They were an unlikely family, a billionaire, a construction worker, a little girl, and a young woman learning to exist again. But they were a family nonetheless, built not on blood or obligation, but on the simple human act of choosing to love each other. Sometimes the greatest riches aren't measured in money, but in moments like these, fireflies dancing, laughter echoing, and a girl who'd survived the unthinkable finally learning that home isn't a place you remember, but a feeling you create with people who choose to stand beside you in the rain.